Hey everybody, welcome to the Sana Q&A Mondays. I'm Meredith Miller, your inner integration coach, and today's Halloween, so happy Halloween to all of you guys. I'm going to answer one more question in English. This person says, I broke no contact after a year and a half of not physically being in the same space with my ex-narcopath and went to a social gathering to which he was at. I outshined him at this event, and there was some correspondence via SMS text afterwards. Initiated by him in the form of hoovering. I fell for it like a fool and tried to engage with him like a friend, thinking we could be friends, which I know now is not possible. My offer of friendship was rejected, and he vindicated his petty revenge in a passive-aggressive manner. He also bought some more time by offering me crumbs and tried to incite pity. 3 weeks ago, I did not even have his number. I am back at square one and have blocked his number. I have decided to stay away from all social media and sever all ties. How do you cope with the withdrawal symptoms, and why is it so hard to let go, especially if it's someone you have traveled with in previous lifetimes? I just wanted to make peace and settle our bad karma, and I feel like I have been discarded all over again. So in the end, I informed him that we should resume our friendship down the track, as I have more work to do in letting him and us go, and it was my polite way of saying goodbye because his last message broke my heart. Any insights or help would be appreciated. Thank you. So, what you experienced was very typical of hoovering, right? Where after you break up, the person tries to get back with you, either through kindness and things like, I miss you. How many of you got one of those texts as a hoovering, right? And by the way, I don't know if you're on Facebook, I know not everybody on here is on Facebook, but I did post on my Facebook page one of Trent Shelton's recent videos, and he was talking about that, like when they say I miss you, right? It's fantastic. So if you've ever gotten one of those I miss you hoovering texts, if you're struggling with that, if you recognize you kept getting sucked back in that way, when they say I miss you and I love you, listen to that video. But so that's one way they can come back, with the I love you, I miss you, blah blah blah. Or sometimes they just come back to hurt you, to get revenge on you. They just want to be mean. They just want an opportunity to hurt you. And it sounds like that's what you went through. He's like he accepted or somehow pretended that you were going to be friends, and then he rejected you and shamed you and hurt you. So that's what happened there, and that's what's going to happen. You can trust now that's going to be the pattern. If you go back in the future, like you promised him, if you have any connection with him in the future, you now know what the result will be. It will be exactly the same. He will smash and hurt you. No matter where you are inside, he's going to find a way to hurt you, and having any form of contact is simply setting yourself up for inevitable harm. It's really important to recognize that. You mentioned that he hooked you with pity, right? The pity ploy, as they call it. Dr. Martha Stout, the psychologist or psychiatrist, the author of The Sociopath Next Door. You really want to listen to that audiobook on YouTube if you haven't, or read the book, but it's phenomenal. And she says, like, the very first thing the psychopath, the sociopath does is the pity ploy every time. It's always to tell you some kind of sad story. And this is why, at a lot of AA meetings, you'll hear this kind of stuff. I've heard so many stories of people. I don't have personal experience there. I've never gone to a 12-step program, but I've heard of so many people, even who got involved with someone at the AA or got involved with the leader of the AA group, and they were so confused, like, how is this person the leader but also abusing me? So he really can't be that bad, or she, because they're the leader there, right? But they're actually just preying upon people, and they come there and they share that pity story, right? It's like the first thing everybody does is share the pity story. And so then they hook you. They hook you that way because you're like, oh, because you have a conscience and you feel bad for them. And it's like you see like this little boy or this little girl or this lost little puppy, and you just want to take them in and fix them and help them and take care of them. And it's so dangerous. It's so dangerous, and they know that. And that's how they're testing your level of empathy. They're testing if you have a conscience or not by what happens when they tell you the pity ploy story. That's always, it should be like red flags are going up. And I don't mean when someone is sharing, the struggles of their past. When someone is sharing the struggles and talking about how they overcame them, or how they're doing things different, or what they're working on in themselves, that's a different situation than the person who's using the pity ploy to manipulate your pity or sympathy for them. And how do you know? Well, one, usually you can tell the difference by how much personal responsibility you hear in that story, but two, how do you feel when you're talking to that person, when you're hearing that story, So how to cope with the withdrawal symptoms you talked about: truth and self-care. Truth about who he is, about what happens when you have any contact with him, about how he abuses you and manipulates you and hurts you at any chance he gets, and self-care. Prioritizing your self-care as number one, taking care of you. Treating yourself better. That's your self-talk. That's taking care of your body. That's taking care of your boundaries. That's taking care of your emotions and meeting your emotional needs, and not looking to other people to rescue you or to meet your emotional needs. Not looking to help and fix and heal someone else so that you can feel like you matter in someone else's life, right? So, so many aspects to self-care. I'm creating a new training program on that, but you want to focus on your self-care and on the truth, on really getting that truth into your head versus the cognitive dissonance of, well, this, and they're two completely opposing ideas, and the confusion and the brain fog, all of that, probably where you went as you talked back to square one, right? You probably went back to that and that confusion and everything. And it's so hard to let go because of that trauma bond. And as I mentioned in some earlier videos, how do you break that trauma bond is by putting the label on that person and accepting that truth. Accepting the truth of who that is. It's a manipulator. It's an abuser. It's a whatever. I think you used the word narcopath. Whatever terminology you want to put on that person, and really get it, like really accept the truth of who that person is, and accept that any contact, any communication with that person inevitably leads to harm. You will get hurt no matter what, right? So when you accept that truth, that really helps you to break that trauma bond. You set yourself free, right? The withdrawal that takes place inside of your brain, like the actual brain drugs, that does take time, to heal, but you can help yourself by not keeping to re-expose yourself to that trauma bond. Every time you strengthen that trauma bond through any form of contact, or through like really thinking about him and focusing on him a lot, you're just strengthening the trauma bond, and it's only going to delay your withdrawal because you're triggering all of these brain drugs to be released again every time you think of him. Your subconscious mind, which is 88 or 90% of your mind, right? Your subconscious mind can't tell the difference between what you're imagining and what's really happening. So if you're thinking about him a lot, if you're constantly churning in your mind and your emotions over him, it's like you're living it. It's like he's really there. It's like you're in this relationship. It's like the thing was never cut. The cord was never cut. The bond was never broken. You're still in it, right? And so it's going to delay that withdrawal. So in order to start that process, you have to put the label on and really get it, really accept it. And it's like the acceptance comes over exposing yourself to the truth over and over and over. There's the levels of grief, right? The processing of grief. And the first stage is denial. Like at first you don't want to believe it. Denial is probably what encouraged you to get in contact with him again. You're like, well, it can't be that bad. We'll just have this closure thing. So many people, I was there too. I thought, okay, we'll just have that one more conversation and we'll get to that closure. It was just total denial. It was denial. It was approaching that person as if they were a normal human being with a conscience who you can communicate with and resolve a problem with and reach some form of closure. But I was in complete denial that I wasn't dealing with a normal person. I wasn't dealing with a person who had a conscience. And that is not how it goes when you try to have any kind of connection or contact with a person without conscience. It never goes well. That closure, it has to come from within yourself. It's not going to come through any kind of attempt at resolving anything with that person through communication. That's how normal humans resolve problems. That's not how people with personality disorders can resolve a problem, because they're never going to take personal responsibility for it, and they're always going to find a way to hurt you. Always, inevitably, they will find that way. So, making peace with him, it's pretty much off the table at this point. Like, I hope you get that after this last experience. There is no peace. It's not like 2 months down the road, now he's going to be ready to make peace, now that he got you back and hurt you that one more time. No, it's never ending. That's who he is. That's his pattern. And the sooner you accept that, the better, because then you can break that trauma bond, and like I said, create that closure inside yourself. And then once you fully accept that truth, you'll be able to mourn the loss of that illusion, what you hoped the relationship would be, who you hoped that person would be, the future that you hope to create with him. You'll be able to fully mourn the loss of that once you move through the final stage of the grief chart, which is acceptance, and that's also what breaks the trauma bond. So, one thing here at the end, and I'm not saying you made a mistake, I'm just saying keep your guard up. You left an open invitation for him in the future. Not that he needs an invitation to try to, hoover and come back, because plenty of times he'll do it even without an invitation. But keep in mind, you did open that invitation. So don't be surprised if he does show up again. Be prepared. So until then, you want to work on why you don't want to have contact with him, why it's dangerous to have contact with him, what is inevitably going to happen if you have any contact with him. I would strengthen all of your no contact boundaries, the blocking, the deleting, all the precautions that you can take to keep this person as far away as possible. Don't answer unknown phone calls, don't answer unknown texts or social media invites, and really ask yourself, and maybe journal about this too, what is the cost of engaging with him again, of having any form of communication with him? What is the cost? And right now, when it's still kind of fresh about what happened, I think it said maybe 3 weeks ago, what happened, really ask yourself, what was the cost of you breaking the no contact boundary? Really describe how you felt, how devastating that was, how much it set you back, how, it's like you're starting your recovery from ground zero again. Really describe that and write it down in a journal. That way you can really look at it. And that way, anytime in the future, if you should find yourself romanticizing about the idea or hopeful that maybe, just maybe, you could resolve things with that one more conversation, you can go back and read that and really check in with what's the cost of doing that. What is the risk and the cost, and, how you felt, right? After this last round of discard and heartbreak, really write that down and focus on how you were feeling and how you probably are still feeling right now because of that. Because down the road, when you're feeling better and you're getting stronger, right? And say he comes up then and say, it's just like it was this time, right? Where you did all this healing work and you're feeling so much better. So when he showed up at that event, it was just okay, we'll give it a try. And it was like your brain totally forgot all the reasons why you shouldn't have any contact with him. So write that down and really, really get it. What is the cost? What is the risk of having any contact with that person at all? So I'm sending you a big hug. If you haven't checked out my Sana 12-week series yet, I highly recommend it. It's only $10. It's on my website. You can download the MP3s. You can listen to them on iTunes. You can print out the PDF worksheets to do the exercises. The PDFs are like the cliff notes of each one, right? A lot of people are visual learners. It's an audio series, right? So when you see it visually and you do the exercises, now it becomes kinesthetic. You're taking an action, you're doing something, you're making it real. You really learn things when you put it into practice. I highly recommend that series. Like I said, it's only $10. It's on my website. The link is below, the video as well. That might really help you create a framework for the next 3 months of getting yourself back on track, after the setback of having a connection and a communication with him again. And it would just keep reminding you why you don't want to go back and why you want to focus on you and your self-healing and your sense of purpose instead. So sending you a big hug.